Hey everybody, Reaper here again with another comic book discussion video. Question: do you like to display your collectibles? It's a question that could be easily answered in a yes or a no, but I would want you to elaborate a little bit. Why yes? Why no? Now, as you can tell, I'm a person that likes to display them. I have this one small little room here dedicated to my hobby, my hobbies. And sometimes it's a mess and sometimes it's not a mess. Right now it's a mess. I have to go back and make sure I clean it up, organize it. It's so easy to get disorganized. But I'm a person that likes to display them. I've always been like that. Always liked to display stuff. When I first started collecting comic books back in the early 90s, I used to hang the comic books on my wall. I used to do it in a really haphazard way. Want to know how I used to do it? I never had a Mylar back then. If I had a Mylar, I didn't even know what the hell it was. And I was like, oh, what's this? But everything had a poly bag. So whatever books I wanted to display, I would, you know how when you have the book in the bag, there's a little bit of space from the top, from the book all the way to the top of the bag, and that's where you usually see the backboard. I would take that part and I would stick a thumbtack through it and put the thumbtack up against the wall. And that's how they stayed up on the wall. It's utterly ridiculous to do that. Eventually, I started putting tape and making sure that the books would stay up with tape, as with extra support. But oddly enough, despite that asinine way of displaying comic books, right? Very rarely did one fall. Whether it was through tape or thumbtacks, I could again count on my hand and have fingers left on how many times a comic book fell off the wall. So they stood up. They stood up, thankfully. But it was just so stupid to do that. But regardless of the method, no matter how brilliant or how idiotic, um, I enjoyed displaying them. I've said this before in a previous video. When you buy the books, they go into boxes or they go somewhere where you don't see them. And you have to pull them out every now and then. And of course we have to do that because, we couldn't possibly have them all out. But I think a lot of us like to display or rotate books to have on display so that we could see them every now and then. Like, this is the book that I got. This is the book that I really, really like. Now, I have in this room here, as you can see, we have the games behind me, right? The reason why you don't see any comic books behind me, you see action figures over here, and you see the picture that Luther Manning gave me for Christmas one year with me, well, with the dudes, right? Me, Patrick, Dr. Von Chilla, and Nick. But all of this is on camera because I have one single window here in this room, and it's always the blind is always closed. I never have it open, so sunlight doesn't get in. It creeps through the blind. But whenever I display something, I didn't want to have comics where sunlight could get hit because you could get, obviously damage to the book. So I display my comics on the wall that's with the window where there's no light that gets at them, no sunlight or anything. So maybe every 2 months, maybe every month and a half, I'll rotate some books out. Usually the formula, excuse me, is I have two little mini walls. Too many little display walls, right? And I designed it where the comic is on a slant so it doesn't fall over. It never falls over. And even if it tried to fall over, I designed the wood to almost be a barrier where it couldn't slide off or anything like that. All right, I've been doing this for years, never had a problem. Never had a problem with the comics at all. But usually the formula is the top row, there are 2 rows to each side of the wall. The top row is dedicated to CGC or slab books. There's plenty of room to display them and all that stuff. The bottom row is the raw books. Every now and then, this is like the 3rd time I've done this, 2nd or 3rd time I've done this since creating these walls many, many years ago, where I decided I'm not going to display any CGCs. I just wanted to put more raw books. And doing that, I could fit more raw books on display. So that's my current setup. I'll probably add pictures of them in this video so you can see what my current setup at this time is and how it looks. And underneath it, I have some of my Marvel Legends action figures. I mean, I don't collect all of them. That's not what I do. I collect characters that I like. I like Gore, the God Butcher. I recently picked up that character. I would like to see the comic book version of that character released soon, not just the movie version, because I think that version looks cooler than the Christian Bale one. But whatever, it's fine. But I mainly pick certain characters that I like. I have a Magneto. I have Doctor Doom. I have a Gambit. The Gambit one because that was the action figure that, when it came to collecting X-Men toys back in the early 90s, for those of you that remember the Toy Biz ones, that the Marvel Legends Gambit, that was the Gambit that I wanted back then. Not that piece of shit Gambit figure that came out in 1993 that I thought was going to be much better than it actually was. You see on the back of the X-Men box, like, ooh, Gambit, that's going to be cool. Then when you get it, you're like, oh my God, this thing's a piece of shit. It does that kick action, and after a while, the leg won't stay down. It just keeps going back up, so he won't stand up. And the trench coat that he came with, the Duster, it's just this little plastic piece of garbage. And I was so disappointed in that. So, many, many years later, when Marvel Legends re-released the Gambit figure, they did a couple versions of him. The Marvel Legends one, and they made it, the box design, the way the X-Men toys were back in 1993. So the Gambit is very similar to the Marvel Legends one. I had to get those. And like I said, those were the Gambit figures that I wanted back then. But like what I'm saying, though, I collect very little with that. And behind me, you got the PlayStation games. I like to display those. Unfortunately, I've run out of room in this room to display everything. I used to have the Genesis collection, which I prefer to display more so than the PlayStation games. But they're off somewhere else. But I do like to display. Like I said, the comics, the games, the action figures. It's just my own private little room for my hobby and where I could get away and look at the stuff. So I like displaying them because I like looking at them. I like being able to look over here and like, oh wow, let me take a look at this game. And like pull it out and say, oh yeah, Castlevania for the Nintendo DS. Pretty cool. And whenever I want to play it, I can just simply reach over and grab it. But the same with comics, though, when it concerns our hobby, I like to be able to look at these things and take them down, look at them, or display them, and give them time outside of the box. Instead of just putting them away and forgetting about them. I'd rather not do that. There are many times when I'll grab a short box, and I have those short boxes, those BCW plastic boxes. I'll grab one of those and start looking through the comics and say, oh wow, I forgot I had this. Oh wow, I forgot it was in this great condition. Stuff like that, because they've been put away for so long, I haven't had them out. And you typically don't want your comics all laying around where stuff could get at them, but in this room I don't allow drinks or anything like that. But I'm just saying in general, you want them out. You enjoy them more. They are, even any collectible rather, they're reminders on, what you enjoy doing in your spare time. And, a lot of people do many different things in their spare time. And this hobby is one of them. Sometimes a little bit more than their spare time, right? But it's a nice reminder to see your hobby out. And that's one of the reasons why I like to display them. But I've been displaying things, whether it was comic books, action figures, ever since I was a collector. Even when I was a kid and I had the loose action figures, I wanted something to display them, other than your dresser, But I would have loved to have had one of those display cases. You see those glass display cases where you could showcase all the figures and all that stuff. I've always had that in me where I wanted to display. And it was nice when I finally, have my own home and a room dedicated to this. I was able to build a little decent comic book wall where I could change them around every now and then and appreciate what I have. So, what about you? Do you like to display? Do you display? What do your displays look like? Is there a formula to how you display things? Like, what I mean is, do you change certain things around? Do you have a certain spot for certain collectibles? What's your story? Be very interested to hear about that in the comments. Take care, everybody, and be safe.